Now that we have users creating checks through the GUI, we want to set up the dashboard page, also known as the check/all page, so that we can list out all of their existing checks. After we do this, we are going to allow users to edit their existing checks and delete their existing checks. But for now, we first need to list them out so that they can click on them. So we can see that check/all, aka the dashboard page, maps to handlers.checklist, and that is a slight typo. I should have said checks list. So we're going to go to the handlers file and create that handler now. This is the dashboard, view all checks. I'm going to copy this down, call it checks list. Again, the data method is get. The title this time is just going to be dashboard. And the body class is checks list. The template it should be fetching is checks list, and everything else can remain the same. Now let's create that template. Touch templates / checks list.html. Open it up, and we're going to paste that in here. And you can see this is pretty bare bones. This is a title and a message telling them that they can create up to 5 checks. But then there is the beginnings of a table, which list out in table headers the method, protocol, URL, state, and details of checks. But then we don't actually see the checks listed. That is because in the client-side JS, we are going to write some JavaScript that allows us to programmatically add rows to this table if the user has checks. And we'll write that in a function that will load after this specific page loads. That startup function will also hide this create a check blurb if the user already has 5 checks. If they have no checks, it will show them this blurb, you have no checks, please create one. So let's go ahead and update that app.js file. And we can go to the checks list functions, and here we see the logic that is only loaded on the checks list page. There's a whole bunch of logic in here about pulling in the existing checks that the user has using a get to API/checks, and then programmatically adding rows, TRs, and cells, TDs, to the table to list out all the checks that the user might have. And here we see the logic that if they have less than 5 checks, we can go ahead and show them the create a check call to action button. And if they don't have any checks, we can show them the you don't have any checks message and the create a check call to action. Now that all that logic is in place and the CSS has been updated as well, we can go ahead and restart the application and navigate to that page to see if our currently logged in user has any checks. So we'll reload this, and there we see the check that we created earlier. It's a put to twitter.com with HTTP. Its current state is up, and we can click here to view, edit, or delete it, but that won't lead to a working page yet because we haven't created the edit a check page yet. We can, however, create a new check, which will take us back to the form, and I'll create one for facebook.com with some random parameters. I'll create that check, and as you can see, I was now sent back to the dashboard, and the check that I just created is included in this list here. Since it was just created and no one has checked it yet, the state is currently unknown. After it's checked the first time, the state will either be up or down. So this dashboard, which is where you're taken to immediately upon logging in, seems to be working fine. If we didn't have any checks here, we would see the message here saying, you don't have any checks, please create one. We can still navigate to the account settings page and all that, but the dashboard is the main launching point for the real meat of the application. So now we can move on to the next lecture and finish up that Lash template.